That's our next door neighbor right there. They build pro mods, and man, when they get a rip, it's unbelievable. It rattles your brain. That sounded like at least
That's
a couple of thousand.
It's a couple
thousand horsepower right there. Hey guys, welcome back to HRG TV. Today we have a very, very fine example of a 2005 vintage Acura MDX. This thing has 1,000 miles on it, some yellowed out headlights, and it doesn't have a lift kit. So we're gonna take care of that today. So this kit comes with a full subframe kit and spacers for the suspension, and we're gonna go ahead and get started on that right now. So we're gonna go ahead and start with under here. This is the subframe area. We're gonna pull the bolts out, lower this down, put pucks in, and new bolts. Unfortunately, this car is not completely stock. There is usually a piece of plastic right here. So I can't show you how to take that off, but basically there's gonna be plastic push pins and maybe some bolts. You just kind of have to use your imagination here. There's also a couple of bolts missing in this car. On these little subframe brackets here, I don't know what you would call these, but these two bolts are missing. If these threads are okay, we're gonna go ahead and put them back in with our bolts. For the first part of this installation, we are gonna start with the subframe, and I've laid out all the tools that you need and the parts that you need to locate for this part of the installation. You're gonna have 6 M12 by 50 bolts, and then you're gonna use 6 of these M12 aluminum spacers, and then 4 of these green M14 pucks here. These are all 1 inch tall, and those are gonna go between the subframe and the body. So we've got a 17 socket and a 14 millimeter socket. So the rest of this is gonna go under the car. But very simple, you basically just have the one socket that does all the bolts in the front. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is support the engine and transmission with some sort of a jack. We're gonna use a pole jack here.
There we go.
All right, we've run into our first issue with this vehicle. This car has had a long life, let's face it, and at some point someone either stripped out or some kind of way replaced one of the subframe bolts with this. This is not a metric bolt, and somebody just ran it in there. Cleater McSkeeter was like looking around his bolt bin, he's like, I got one that'll fit, and just Also, it is not long enough. This kit is meant to reuse these. As you can see, there's a lot of threads right here. So we reuse these, but we can't use this. So we are going to have to figure out a way to, I guess, cut these threads back in or find a longer bolt with this messed up thread pattern. So first challenge of our day here. Another small snafu here. There's another bolt in this subframe that is not original. And this is actually a completely different size head than the other two. And also I noticed this bolt appears to have been cross-threaded in. We're gonna have us a fun time trying to take this apart. No, the thread looks,
the right threads.
It's just shorter than it's supposed to be. All right, so this is one of the bolts that someone put in there in replacement of, I don't know why they would have taken the factory ones out and lost them, I guess, but for frame of reference, this is the bolt that is supposed to be in there, and this is the bolt that was put in there. So this bolt here is not gonna work. So we are actually gonna have to replace this and that other bolt with ones that are the proper length so that this is even gonna work. So the plan right now is we're gonna drop the subframe a little more than 1 inch so that we can get a thread pattern to fix that busted up hole. But to do that, we actually have to lower the engine down. So we're gonna have to do all this twice basically. Now, I can't wait to hear what the comment section has to say about how we're fixing these threads, because I'm sure there's someone that is gonna tell us that we're doing it completely wrong. So I'm really excited to hear about that. This is gonna work. We're gonna cut new threads, and we're gonna put the proper bolt back in here, and it's gonna go down the road. It'll be just fine. So look, there's not a lot of debris on there. It did cut something, and I threaded it all the way to there. So I'm pretty sure we have some clean threads to work with, but let's just thread in a bolt by hand. Let's get this lined up a little bit more so we definitely aren't cross-threading, and see if we can't just get a regular bolt back in there. Yeah, that's threading right in. You know what I call that?
What?
Fixed. All right, that turned out to be an easy fix, and we're gonna go ahead and move on with the installation. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna place our green puck spacers between the subframe and the body, starting in the front right here. You can see we have quite a gap. That's plenty enough room, and this bolt is really just here to maintain the alignment while we drop it. So we're gonna go ahead and take that back out, and we're going to put the factory bolts back in. All right, so I want you to point something out here. We've caught threads, and look at how much the thread engagement is. There's another inch. So even though we're reusing these factory bolts, there's still an entire inch of thread engagement there. We gotta put the bracket in though. Okay. That is exactly 17 ugga-duggas on that bolt right there, so it should be good. All right, moving on to the back. Throw our bolt and our spacer. Just like that. All right, so the last step of the front subframe drop kit is installing the engine spacers. It's gonna be two M10 spacers that are 1 inch tall, 1 inch wide, and you've got a set of M10 by 70 bolts that are gonna drop through this bracket and into the bracket that is on the side of the engine block. You have to be kind of low to the ground. Like we're on the lift, but it's actually easier with it lower because you're gonna take a floor jack and you'll be able to position the engine in such a way that the bolts will line up properly. So we're gonna use a floor jack to support the bottom of this. Just put a piece of wood or something on the top of the jack underneath your oil pan so you don't dent it up. But we're gonna be able to maneuver this engine just a little bit to get those bolts lined up.
Sort of, yeah. Put it right here. Ooh, why is that wet? Probably because it's leaking every fluid.
All right, so we forgot to show this earlier, but what you need to do, there's one more step with this ABS wire. And as you can see, it is pulled sort of tight right there. And what we're gonna do is actually turn this bracket 90 degrees, as there's two minor issues with it where it is. One is that it can touch this, and you know, not that you would spend a whole lot of time with the wheels dropped all the way down, but I don't like wiring touching metal anywhere. So we're gonna address that here. What I want you to do basically is just turn this 90 degrees like that. That is the fix. You can actually, I think I'm gonna actually straighten that tab out just a little bit, but as you can see, it needs to go just like that. That gives it slack down here, plenty of room, and it's not too tight up top before it cause any problems there. Yeah, just flatten that out. Now we can put it back on, just like that. Now, as you can see, this wire does not come pointing upward into the edge of this, so it's clear there. And our wheels are turned all the way to the right. And as you can see, there's a lot more slack. When you guys are working on these cars, I mean, this thing is 20 years old. You're gonna notice things that need to be addressed. When you're doing the lift kit, you're gonna see stuff like this. Now, if you'll notice, this bushing here is cracked, this boot is torn, and that boot is just leaking. So what the point is you gotta think about these things when you're gonna install these lift kits on a 20-year-old car, is you're gonna need to address certain things. We don't include repair parts with our kits. People always get angry with us because they find out they needed more stuff to complete the lift, but these are repair parts. Those don't come with our lift kits, but I suggest checking that stuff before you order a lift kit and see if your car needs maintenance like this. With that said, this is basically gonna be a beat or trail rig, so I don't really concern myself with worn bushings and leaky boots because we're not gonna drive this thing every day. We're just gonna take it on the trails. I interrupt this video to bring you some special news. We are giving away a 3-inch lift kit for the 01 to 05 MDX, which is a $719 value. And all you have to do to win, comment down below how many miles you think the MDX has on it. After 30 days, whoever has the closest guess, post your guesses in the comments below and we'll pick a winner in 30 days. All right, moving on to the back, we're gonna start on the rear subframe, and along the way we're gonna drop the carrier bearing on the drive shaft. So all the parts are sitting here and all the tools you need are right here as well. You've got a 17, 14, and a 12mm socket. We're gonna start with the carrier bearing. So you've got your two M10 by 50 bolts here and your two 1x1 M10 spacers. And then you've got the 4 main pucks that go in the rear subframe, 4 new bolts. These are not labeled, but it is a 14 by 90. These are for your trailing arm spacers. And this here is gonna be for your drive shaft safety loop. We have to amend our tool list here. I actually forgot that these are an 18mm. So you will need an 18 for these bolts. And the rear trailing arm bolts are actually a 19. So you will need also, after the 14, the 17, you will need an 18 and a 19. But if you have a regular socket set, you will have those sockets on hand anyway. The front drive shaft safety loop has plenty of room here, but once we drop this, the drive shaft is gonna contact here. So we're gonna drop this loop down about 1 inch, and then we're gonna move on to the back. Okay, the official way to fix this is to bend the metal back. If you have ever installed any kind of aftermarket product, there are some times when you just have to improvise and solve the problem along the way on your own. Really, it's an easy fix and it shouldn't cause any trouble in doing so. All right, so if you are one of the 2 people that is concerned about this touching, just take a pry bar, bend it out of the way, and if you're really particular, you could shoot a little bit of spray paint on that edge, but we're not gonna do that.
Oh, okay.
A little bit more. One more little touch. There we go. Pull the shock off. Lefty loosey. That's way easier.
Oh, yeah.
Fix it in post. basically what we did was we put one bolt in. We had both bolts in place. So basically you would take them out one at a time. Factory bolts come out one at a time, put the new bolts in, put one spacer in, and then tighten that one. That way it doesn't swivel around and become out of alignment when you put the second bolt in. So it's a much easier way to do it. We learned the hard way, so you don't have to. All right, so we're gonna move on to actually installing the lift kit itself now that we're done with the subframe kit. And so the tools that you're gonna need are right here. You're gonna need a 17mm deep well, 18mm socket for your sway bar end links, 22mm socket for your main strut bolts, a 10mm for brake lines, and a 12mm for your brake line extension brackets. And then we have a, what is this, a 19, 18 or a 19? 18. Okay. So we're going to start with doing the front, and we're going to put the two front spacers on, sway bar end links, and these are your camber bolts. So I want to point out something new that we've done with these kits is now we have made them a left and a right. These are offset to correct camber and caster. You will see left and a right. Now, I want to clear something up. Left is driver's side on US models. It's not left if you're looking at it from here. It's left and right, just to clear that up, okay? So don't think that left goes on the right side of the car. Left goes on driver's side on US models. Okay. Shock extension brackets, these are gonna go on the rear shock. So those are gonna give you that little bit of extra travel with this lift kit. These are your rear up control arms. These are adjustable. These are gonna give you camber adjustability in the back. So these are gonna go in place of the factory units in the back. This is WD-40. We're going to go ahead and spray some of these bolts because this car is 20 years old and has 1,000 miles. Now this is a Southern car, but you just never know.
Probably want to point out it'd be easier to pop these clips. These clips are already popped out so that you could reach in and grab the nuts out as you loosen them so you don't lose them. Boom. All right. And back in we go. This is never a fun part. Okay, just don't do the same thing we did last time. Or like balls and...
No, it's fine. Are the bolts in?
Not yet.
Okay.
Almost. There we go. Well, that's definitely a two-person job.
Tapes and throw them in there. That's all built-in cassette deck. There we go.
Boom.
There it goes.
Ooh, don't pinch my hand on the rotor. I'm sliding backwards is the thing.
Our short floor's too shiny. Somehow we managed to lose the audio on this clip, but I'm gonna go ahead and just walk you through what we had to do here. To get the sway bar link off, we had to use a wrench to grab the backside to get the nut to come off and get that sway bar link out. Now the next thing we're going to do is install the brake line extension brackets. This basically relocates the brake line so it's not pulled so tight. And it's just a 2-bolt deal. Put that on and your brake line is going to be much happier. So this part is about the new sway bar links, and it comes with a Zerk fitting. And I had to talk about how the plastic pieces on these sway bar links are merely for shipping. They are not part of the sway bar link. You would take those off and throw them away. We've had plenty of people call and complain and say those were broken. Just keep adding more and more tools to the stuff you need. to do this job.
There we go.
We're gonna go ahead and start on the back, and I just wanted to show you, this is all the tools you're gonna need, basically extensions, sockets, and a couple of wrenches. We're gonna go ahead and tackle that rear spring spacer installation right now.
I think overall we got really lucky with the rust on this car. I mean, it is a Southern car, but unfortunately the rear sway bar links were too rusted together for us to use the Allen key for the center of the bolt. So we ended up having to use vice grips to hold the back side of the sway bar link so that we could get that nut off of there.
There we go. Yep. And
Oh, wow. Super easy. Barely an inch. You got a 50-50 shot.
For some reason, the cotter pin that came with these arms is actually too big to go through the hole in the bolt. So we just reused the stock one. It's just a little bit smaller in diameter and it fit perfectly.
bingo.
All right, guys, there's one last thing that I gotta show you, and now we did this off camera, but I'm gonna show you what to do anyways. Very simply, you're gonna take out the bolt that holds this ABS wire to the frame, and there's a little spacer you can see right there. It goes between that little bracket and the frame. There's one on each side, one passenger, one driver. So we're gonna throw those on to give the ABS wires a little bit more slack so that they're not pulled tight. You'll notice when you drop this subframe that this is actually pretty tight until you do that. The last thing is gonna be muffler hangers, which come with the kit. There's gonna be 4 of them, one on each side for the mufflers. And as you can see, I put them on the second to lowest hole I tried putting them on the lowest hole and it just didn't seem right. And then there's one more right here, and the last one is right here. So you've got a total of 4 of these that are longer than the stock ones, and they're gonna go right in place of those. All right, the last thing we're gonna do is go around and double check all the bolts, and we're gonna double check all of the brake dust shields to make sure that they're not rubbing on the brake rotors. That can happen quite often if you're doing suspension work. So the last step I would say is to check these, make sure they're not rubbing before you deliver it to the customer, or if it's your car, just make sure you do that before you go driving it. All right, we've got the whole lift kit installed, and there's one last little thing that we gotta do, and it's easier if you have the car off the lift or, you know, with the doors open.
I don't want to break it. Okay, easy now. There we go.
All right, that pretty much wraps up the install on this. Now, I did promise that we're gonna try some 31-inch tires on here, and that's exactly what these are. This is a 255/70 on a 17-inch wheel. This is a Black Rhino Boxer wheel. I don't remember the offset. I'll put the offset on the screen on these wheels, but I wanna point something out. If you bring the camera in right here, the limitation is not necessarily your fenders, but your strut. It hangs over the tire, and there isn't any more room to go to a bigger tire unless you put the wheel way out here past this. 31 inches, as big as you can go on these. If you look back here, you can see it doesn't rub on these fenders, and we have taken this and done some testing. All right, I appreciate you guys watching to the end, and I want to tell you guys we have a very, very exciting video upcoming of this car being tested to its limits at the infamous URI National Forest. So look forward to that in a future video. It's going to be awesome. All right, that pretty much wraps up the installation on this 2000, what the hell was it? Fix it in post.